Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We have got a lot of news to dive into this evening, and to be frank with you, I don't believe there's a way we're going to be able to cover absolutely everything. So let's get right to it. Iran has launched another round of missiles from the initial round of 6 that they fired earlier this afternoon. This was slightly unexpected, at least as unexpected as some things can be in the Middle East. Many of us out there in the wide open, beautiful world were treated to pictures of Iranian missiles into the sky just outside of Tehran, more specifically from the Khomeini area, that would be the Markazi province, and those missiles were flying towards Jordan, presumably towards U.S. bases in Jordan. For those of you who care to see such things, it's kind of hard to get clips, but as the missiles were flying over the Iraqi sky heading towards Jordan, got a couple of clips of them in the distance, and then the Patriot system was activated in Jordan, and that is according to the U.S. Central Command. And I believe we have that statement also ready to go because we came prepared this evening. CENTCOM said, quote, at 5:45 p.m. Eastern today, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps forces launched multiple ballistic missiles from Iran in an attempted surprise attack on U.S. forces based in the Middle East. All Iranian missiles were successfully intercepted. That is a fact check on some of the Iranian media that said, we have scored a direct hit on one particular base in Jordan. And then a lot of comments pointed out that that's not what the dust cloud of an explosion looks like if it's a successful missile or drone strike. And then about half of those Iranian news outlets took down their posts because, of course. Anyway, the CENTCOM statement, U.S. forces remain vigilant and at high state of readiness. Now, we do actually have a video, supposedly, of the interceptions. And we've also reached the era where watermarks are getting really, really annoying. So if you see the DVD logo style watermarks flying on the screen while the Patriot missiles are intercepting the strikes. Very, very nice. Great interceptions. Now, since then, the Iranians have launched additional in other breaking news on an American Airlines flights grounded nationwide due to an IT outage. But there are additional launches from Western Iran. Now, that attack is now considered over. There was one other missile that was reportedly launched and may have failed to enter the atmosphere. Meaning, as we've talked about before here on the show, the rocket was launched and then it failed to engage second stage rockets. And then it fell somewhere very, very, very short of range, probably not even making it out of Iran itself. Now, there isn't any plan from the United States announced so far to retaliate. Again, the regime has made statements that Iran is prepared for all-out war and that the Houthis are going to do all of this stuff as well. There are all of these different little bits and blurbs flying around. Again, also breaking news here, stateside, American Airlines has grounded all flights nationwide that have not yet departed due to an IT outage. That's according to the FAA. Now, this is just as a quick note here. This is not unusual. American Airlines has been suffering IT outages throughout this year. How do I know? Because several flights of mine this year have been canceled due specifically to American Airlines outages. The IT systems, the actual technological base for a lot of airlines in the United States and abroad for that matter, but also our air traffic control system, those are woefully outdated. And again, as some of these organizations and companies try to update things, you're getting outages in the process. Oil was a little bit down, under $80 a barrel at the Brent crude. Now, again, that market has closed and you're starting to see certain other intermediate crude oil markets go up by about $1 or $2. There's not anything really significant just yet. So we're going to keep you appraised. There's other stuff to chat about when it comes to these international updates. Obviously, with Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, Volodymyr Zelensky, whose nation struck an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. And there was mostly diplomatic concerns about a brighter conflict. Nothing would terrify the Russian infrastructure more. There were some very heavy diplomatic activity that we do not know of, but we know there was a lot of diplomatic activity sent between the Russians and the Chinese right after that attack. No diplomatic cable, not a lot of messages being sent via the various means that the Russian infrastructure sends messages to Iran, which is also rather telling. Now, since then, Ukraine has said to Iran, hey, we didn't mean to do it, and it was, an accident, and, hey, no one knew that was you. To be fair,
it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
I doubt it. We don't really launch a lot of accidental, hey there, how you doing, just, casually grazing strikes these days from any nation at any time. But either way, it looks like the Iranians are saying, you're going to pay us money. The Ukrainians are saying no, and it's probably going to fizzle out. I doubt that the Caspian Sea is going to become the next hotbed of activity, but for a multi-power struggle here in this instance. Over in the United States, though, there's another conflict that is brewing. Governor Mikie Sherrill of New Jersey is refusing to turn over any voter roll information at all to the Department of Justice. This one is a little surprising, and it's a little surprising for a couple of reasons. First of all, Mikie Sherrill had already gone before the country and announced that 6,600 individuals, give or take, had been registered due to a software error to vote who were non-citizens, meaning they were ineligible to vote. Now, it wasn't clear initially whether those 6,600 were comprised of those who were here on legal work visas, on student visas, whether they were individuals who were ineligible to vote, including those with felonies, or those who were in the process of naturalization. So they're getting their social security card, they're actually getting a couple of other documents set in place, but they're not going to be ready and therefore registered to vote before the November elections. Maybe if they're set to be naturalized in March of next year, you don't really get to register to vote yet. But there was this software error. And then she told the country, that 400 at least individuals in that first sweep had actually gone forward and voted over 2023 and 2024 before when she was governor. And so Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights of the United States Department of Justice, said, okay, hey, you need to turn over a lot of voting documentation, a lot of the voter rolls, because now we need to check this. This is a serious case of federal elections that have been compromised either by an accident, whether by software, whatever it may be. And Mikie Sherrill's response was, as of today, a reporter asked, are you going to turn over these things? And she said, no.
The Trump administration is seeking, I believe by today, the list of non-citizens who are registered to vote and the approximately 400 that did vote. To what extent will your administration comply with the Trump administration's request in that regard?
As I have said, I am not in the habit of turning over private identifying administration information.
She got very, very roasted for this, but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Of the citizens of New Jersey.
Now, she says of the citizens of New Jersey. Now, here is where we get into a bit of an issue. It says, I'm not turning over the information regarding the citizens of New Jersey, but the individuals who, like in this 6,600 who were accidentally registered to vote, it just so happens that they're not citizens. Now, again, I gave a little asterisk there. I would doubt that these are all felons that have accidentally, magically been registered to vote. I very much doubt that's the case. I don't think so, based on even the way that she phrased it herself. And given that information, again, it's not quite clear what the reason would be to just classify all of these people as New Jersey citizens. Seems kind of dishonest.
This federal government is weaponizing the government against individuals that disagree with them.
Oh, yes, that's it. Again, I'm looking for example, in Indiana, there are contested elections, right? Indiana, the state of Indiana, where we're broadcasting this show from, though all of my colleagues be in Washington, D.C. Here in Indiana, there are a couple of states that Republicans would really, really like to have. And there are even some areas where perhaps your average Hoosier Republican might say, hey, I bet there's voter fraud going on in Marion County. That's Indianapolis. I bet there's some voter fraud going on up in the region, up near Gary. Those are two contested districts that Republicans would really like to win. Well, the DHS has access to Indiana's voter rolls. And do you know how many citizens have been purged from the voter rolls so far? 0. None. No Democrats. So she's saying that Trump is targeting people that he disagrees with here in the election data. That hasn't been borne out at all. Again, it's much better for the Trump administration if you have two districts that flip as a surefire thing going into the election with a Republican administration who theoretically, according to the conspiracy theory, wouldn't challenge it. Picking up a seat in New Jersey, I doubt that New Jersey, it's gone on for too long and I really think that the Jersey Shore needs to be as red as the Republican Party. I doubt it. Radio crew will send you over to the commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream. Lots more breaking news. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We'll let her continue her rants because then she starts getting into the super conspiracy land.
They weaponized my private data against me in my election, and so I am...
Your private data? Ma'am, you cheated, or you were part of a cheating scandal when you graduated the United States Naval Academy. It's why they wouldn't let you walk. That's not private data. Your activities as a cadet is not private to you. It is most assuredly, verifiably not.
Working to protect people and their private data here in New Jersey.
Now, she says one other thing that's just absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, goofball, insane. She then starts talking about how the National Guard is going to march down the streets and is going to Anschluss, New Jersey for the midterm election.
Same president who's toying with sending ICE or the National Guard to the polls in November to intimidate voters. No
He's not, by the way. I've heard this a bajillion times. He's not.
wonder he wants to get rid of mail-in voting because he wants you to have to come through a gauntlet of ICE officers to vote.
To be clear, I'm seeing this in a couple of the comments here. So as far as Governor Sherrill, she was part of a cheating conspiracy. That's why I rephrased that. Either she cheated or she covered up for someone who cheated. So at West Point, the cadet motto, a cadet will never lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. So at the Naval Academy, different wording, but the same principles apply. She was part of a conspiracy, students working together to cheat. And either she did the cheating or covered up for the cheating, so she didn't get to walk. That's what that scandal explained there.
It's the same president who's pushing lies and distortions about voter fraud, including here in New Jersey.
Again, you had 400 individuals who were not qualified to vote, and likely non-citizens, at least a few of them. And you did not turn over that information to the federal government. You have chosen today not to do so. And your answer is the National Guard. She did the same thing. We've talked about this before here on the show. Whenever someone is totally confident, whenever they're totally not nervous, they get out there and they write a tweet that is longer than most young adult novels. So gets out here and starts going, well, we've mailed letters. And essentially what she gets out to say to the public is that she is sending this down the chain for county election officials to investigate. So in other words, this is never going to be fully investigated. I'm sorry, some trustee member, some county election judge is not going to do a full-style SWAT investigation, bring in the FBI for whatever. That's not going to happen. So essentially, this is going to go on for a couple of years. They're not going to catch the vast majority of individuals who did this. They're going to chalk it up to a, shucksy doodles kind of situation. And then nothing's going to happen. Because by then, it will have been so long. And who cares? After all, we fixed the error. That's where she's going with this. Now, she also wrote a very fancy little letter to, again, the Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, and said, she claimed that the Department of Justice has no legal basis to, quote, provide extensive personal information about thousands of New Jersey residents. So I'm a little confused. Why is it okay for China to have access to this data? And I'm not just talking about what the President of the United States got up in front of the country and talked about regarding China having access to public voter information. Not what I'm talking about, like registering as a Republican, a Democrat, independent, primary, etc. What I'm talking about is that under Mikie Sherrill, she allowed a Chinese-based electronic pass, a toll booth card infrared scanning company, to have access to tens of thousands of New Jerseyans' information, New Jersey citizens' information that is far more detailed and intricate, including possible access to social security numbers. And here she's saying, well, you don't have the legal authority to ask. If the Chinese ask, well, then, of course, ni hao. But in this case, a very, very wild decision. Rather strange. Now, there's some other stuff the federal government is doing. This brings us to, again, the kind of awkward cover-up, the kind of back it up and try again cover-up that appears to be in full swing. We got to bring that radio crew back in from the commercial break. So as we pivot over here, we're going to talk a little Fauci. Radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. The Senate, Rand Paul of Kentucky, getting ready to hold a pretty serious hearing. And I say serious with some quotes here. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, he released Fauci's diary entries, more than 1,100 pages, covering December 2019 and December 2022, around basically started on July 25th of this year. This was done as part of the committee's ongoing congressional oversight investigation into the COVID-19 pandemic's origins, ahead of a scheduled hearing where Fauci was subpoenaed to testify. So first thing is first, Rand Paul, again, a lot of different Republicans in the Senate, some that I agree with, some that I don't agree with. Very, very good on the transparency side for this reason and this reason alone. Fauci, this is not as though in his safe at home, the safe that he keeps next to the server in the bathroom. Shout out to Hillary. This is not the same kind of situation in which like the FBI broke into the home and dug through documents like how many seashell formations, say 8647 here. Like, no. In this case, Fauci stored his personal journal entries, like in Word documents, on federal servers. So these were kept on work computers or for memoir purposes, because obviously if you get hired by the federal government, nothing could be more important than being handed tons of cash by the federal government over your career just to write about how wonderful you are. And Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., his team located them after an 8-month search across 11 separate government servers where they had been stored, which is pretty incredible. Meaning that these things have been stored somewhere specifically, and either they had wind that these existed, or they stumbled upon something and then they were spread out and moved to different places. I, as someone who's done a lot of Freedom of Information Act request stuff from my education journalism days, it is wild how often you will see great lengths taken to obfuscate where documents are kept and stored on a digital database. And it's not as though, he was working in this department for a while, and so half of his stuff was over here, and they changed his email when he moved over to doing this side of the department work, and so then some of his files were lost for the age of time. No. Fauci was reportedly not alerted in the advance of the release, which I find really funny. And a lot of people have talked about them on large network scale TV, and I'm not going to waste your time by spending a huge chunk of the show saying what a lot of people who are far better at digging into this than I am. I'm going to give you the summary and then get to the brass tacks of what's actually going to happen. Spoiler, far less than should be. And there's a very simple reason why that far too few are actually going to talk about in the committee hearing tomorrow. So I'm going to give you a bit of a preview before you catch the exciting, thrilling adventures on C-SPAN 2. So this is from Rand Paul's post. As far as we know, Fauci, number one, big, huge liar. Big, huge liar. He lied about pushing school closures. There's multiple videos that we have, interviews in which Fauci said that he never pushed for schools to be closed. He never pushed for businesses to be closed. He never pushed any governments, local or state, to shut things down. Yet in the diary, we have entry after entry after entry in which he bragged to himself about getting New York City to shut down, and then getting Gavin Newsom to shut down California, and then encouraging a series of shutdowns across the country, economic, religious, educational, etc. So he's a big stinking liar. He lied about the fatality rate. He knew back from early February 2020 that the fatality rate for COVID-19 was 0.2% to 0.3%, more closely akin to influenza. And way after that, he was talking about 2 to 3% fatality percentages for this particular disease. So he's a big liar. Of course, we can talk a little bit later about this if it's necessary, but he was just a huge prima donna. He wrote in such detail consistently about how wonderful he was. He did all these interviews with people, and he would complain. He complained all the way back into 2013 about how, no one understands. Everyone is jealous of me, Anthony Fauci. I'm such a rock star, he called himself. Super huge prima donna, really obsessed with fame and people posting pictures of him. Again, look, ego, very common in politics. A lot of people have egos. I've got a bit of an ego myself, all right? But I'm sorry. Writing entries to yourself about how excited you are about needing to go on program. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. That's just really creepy. Again, if you, as other commentary have pointed out, both on the left and the right, if you got a picture of yourself as a portrait in your own home, like when people walk in and they see you because that's how proud you are of you. Yeah, that's
Nope.
I'm gonna pass. Now, the best part about all of this is the fallout. I do want to mention one final thing, however, before we get to the fallout, because there is one particular thing that absolutely could have him dead to rights. This would be, by the way, according to the briefing information that we have, where Fauci would have violated the Espionage Act. If you're in the federal government and you know something on intelligence means, and you then falsify that information, or you pass incorrect information knowingly to the executive branch and its enforcement agencies, you can be charged with violating the Espionage Act. Meaning this, Fauci knew way early on, that COVID-19 did not come from someone eating a big bowl of bats and spit in a wet market. But it was absolutely and almost unequivocally, that's how clear this was, unequivocally linked to a bioengineering lab in Wuhan where it was leaked. Now then exacerbated once it got out, exacerbated in this wet market, and then, the chaos and the craziness, which again brings up another lie, because Fauci said that he didn't really have a big concern, obviously, about a lot of the protests that were outdoors, even though there was one particular journalist, I believe, from Taiwan who made the point that the Chinese wet market had about the same number of individuals per a square 100-foot radius, or I should say 100. He said 100 meteor radius in the post, not 100 feet. Excuse me. Not that that matters in this case, but essentially the same as the BLM protests. The same for same. So why weren't those super spreader events kind of a thing? I don't really want to dive into all of this specifically because he's a liar. He's been caught dead to rights on this. I want to dig into what's really making people uncomfortable right now, and then what the actual consequences are for Fauci. Spoiler alert, very, very, very little. And it's not because Biden pardoned him. Nope. And it's not because all they can get him on is perjury. Again, no. The reason, I know I'm going out of order here, that nothing is going to be done is because the Senate and the House is going to honor the auto pen pardon system. And also the preemptive pardon thing that Gerald Ford never should have used, regardless of the fact that I think that, again, Nixon was completely set up. Preemptive pardon, anything that may have been done in the mystical ethers of time. I don't think that a president has the constitutional authority to do that. That's like genie level nonsense. And Robin Williams has left us. So I don't think anyone gets to do any genie nonsense anymore. I don't think so. But alas, this entire situation is making people uncomfortable. It's making a lot of Democrats, like, for example, former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb. He was on CNBC. He does not like answering questions about his complicity in these particular statements by Fauci and lionizing him and almost worshiping the man. I think this is pretty worth watching.
Having a reputation totally in the toilet at 85 years, does that hold him to account for what he was responsible for?
The Tony Fauci I saw in those emails is not the Tony Fauci I knew over the years. I mean, he was a guy who was sober, who was careful about his public appearances and his statements, was always very thoughtful.
Did you figure out the obsession with mainstream media in defending him, and Jake Tapper having multiple dinners and best friends, and what did that come from? And I know people around here that would call Tony Fauci a hero.
Yeah.
An apt question, and an important one, but not for the reasons that you might think. Radio crew, we have to send you over to the commercial side of things so the FCC doesn't send Fauci after me in some horrific, awful style of retribution. I don't even know if they could do that. That'd be kind of funny, though. We'll see you on the other end of that commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. So, he's all happy and having a really great time and hanging out with all of these meaty people that are doing interviews and carrying water for him. Again, is that gross? Yeah, sure. Is that going to be the kind of gross that locks him up? No, that has a totally different kind of downstream effect.
Yeah, I can't dissect.
You don't know why.
How people perceive. I think different people had different emotions around.
This would be why. Because everyone around him, so we went through this with Graham Plattner. Do you remember? At first it was, well, I don't really believe what Lindsay Fifield said because after all, she worked for the Heritage Foundation one time, like a couple of years ago, and she's a Republican. So obviously Republican women can't get abused. So I'm sure she's lying to Graham Plattner. And then that turned into, well, I mean, we're a party of redemption and friendship and picking yourself up after you maybe abuse women and possibly, message children and among a bunch of other wonderfully horrific scandals. And then eventually it becomes he needs to step down. And then it became deleting a bunch of tweets and, well, I never liked him at all. And I was just playing along. Right now, you're in the, well, I don't know what was going on in his head. I have no idea. Personally, I always thought he was nice. There were rumors Eric Swalwell was a womanizer, whatever that means. But I mean, I didn't know that he was, groping and perhaps molesting women in hotel rooms. That's where we are right now with the Fauci thing. And you can see this on his face. Well, I don't know.
Mask, shut down the whole
It's a difficult time, Joe,
it's a difficult time, guys. He's under a lot of stress.
You know very well, and I think people are looking for a voice that they can cling to. Maybe they...
I am science. That's why people don't like me. I mean, that was...
True. Again, the man said, I'm science. I am science. Excellent. Thrilling. And that's why he said people don't like it, because they don't like science. Again, this was the whole, I trust in science, believe science, that kind of nonsense.
You're very guarded and nice.
I was disappointed by the emails, I have to admit.
Oh, there it is. Kind of poke. Tapper's going through a lot of the same stuff over at CNN. And again, deservedly so. The reason I say deservedly so is that there are individuals out there. For example, I don't know and admittedly a ton about the history of Scott here, the former FDA commissioner, a little bit from some of his prior statements, but not a ton. But I would assume that there is within him a rather talented individual whose reputation is now marred because of decisions that he has made. The reason that I find all of this to have an eternal downstream effect actually has very little to do with the fact that Jake Tapper is a guy who's on the left. It's that Jake Tapper is, as an interviewer, rather talented. He is. He has a lot of natural talent to do things. And instead of that being used to actually provide a level of transparency for the government, instead it's scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal after veterans and after going after individuals on false pretenses. And then it's the Fauci stuff. And then it would be the Biden stuff with that, and on and on and on. And so what you have are a lot of individuals who had the potential to do something phenomenal. And I don't mean to be too dramatic here and say, like a Samson, for example, would be the biblical analogy here, who had the opportunity to do amazing things. Instead, they wasted it. They blew it all on this. And then all of the individuals that are in their bubbles, see, do I feel bad for this? No, not. I don't feel bad for individuals they made these decisions as grown adult men and women. But now what the downstream effect will be is Americans will never trust these institutions. And here's the catch. It's not a good thing for Americans to just never trust institutions. It's not. I like being able to walk into my church or walk into a meal with my family and know that on face value, I can trust the individuals around me. Now, it's still good to be circumspect. It's good to trust but verify. But in the instance that there is irreparable damage that has been done to Americans and their trust in society, and there is no remorse at all for the actions of individuals who just blindly played along with this. Radio crew, welcome back from your commercial break. Now, where are we actually going to? Are we going to get Fauci? Is this going to be the big hearing of the game? No, it's not. And two reasons. Number one, because the Senate is going to honor preemptive, magical, sometimes equals pi r over y kind of nonsense logic on the auto pen mystical pardon of majesty. So what does that mean they can get? They can get him on perjury tomorrow. Woohoo! Yeah, perjury. And again, don't take my word for it. Here's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Testify in front of Rand Paul's committee this week. He has immunity against all of the things that he did prior to President Biden signing, or the electronic pen signing his pardon, but he could perjure himself now. So there are many things.
He could. Is he directly going to? I believe he is going to wiggle as though he is a toddler who has been asked to sit still. He is going to wriggle and writhe and do whatever he can to just answer very emotionally based, well, I never thought that at the time that I might have to consider doing this over here, and that is a personal matter. That's how he's going to do it. That's exactly, no one's going to set up any specific, intricate, super mousetrap level Rube Goldberg machine perjury traps for him. No, I don't believe it.
That he said that we know are lies, and Rand Paul presumably is going to ask him about those things. And if he lies again, then he could be subject to perjury prosecution.
I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. I don't. Why do I say that? Because the House of Representatives and the Senate cannot even go through with charging, convicting, and removing a federal judge who has violated constitutional norms. The House of Representatives and the Senate are not even capable of going through with removing members of Congress efficiently and consistently who have clearly violated the law. You just get social pressure until they resign. I just don't see it. I do not see it. And the reason that I see it, believe it or not, has to come all the way down to the Save America Act stuff. I'm just going to be very clear with you. The Save America Act and the August recess is truly the measure of understanding as to why this Fauci hearing tomorrow is going to be great for social media fodder. A lot of your favorite people and mine will make videos about it. I'll show you clips from tomorrow. I'll say, well, I told you it was going to be fun. And you'll have some yelling and shouting because it's on camera. And then you'll have a little bit of jumping up and down, and it'll just be a real hoot. And very, very little, if anything, is going to happen. Nope, because they are going to choose to play by a bunch of rules that no one else is playing by, and that are only going to serve to prevent the actual system of the American people from once again holding accountability of the government over them. And that's going to be a significant issue. Now, that brings us over to the actual lodestone of that argument. That would be the Save America Act. So right now, you have a lot of Republicans who are doing finally in front of the open. I've said this has been going on behind closed doors for a while. Now you have Republicans who are throwing punches, not just against the Save America Act, but for the Save America Act, who really weren't going to do so in the first place. So as a quick reminder, the Save America Act in its current form, you have the House, which has passed over a ban on insider stock trading for members of Congress, and voter ID requirements for the Save America Act. Now, there are a lot of individuals, some that I spent time with yesterday evening on TV, who said over and over and over and over again, interrupting everyone consistently, saying it's a passport bill. It's a passport bill. It makes you have a passport to vote. No. You need documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, which could be a passport. However, there are all kinds of other documentation, a military ID, a government-issued photo ID which shows U.S. birthplace, a birth certificate, which you can go down to any health department and get your birth certificate. Any health department. It's not hard. How do I know? I just got my birth certificate again in Henry County, Indiana, where I was born. Not that hard to do, boys and girls. Of course, your naturalization certificate, consular report of birth abroad, or similar document. Valid photo ID. That's it. So proof of citizenship and voter ID. It's not a passport bill. Now, if you want to wrap it all up into one, then yeah, the passport will do it. But if it's a birth certificate, which again, anyone can get, the health department, guys, it's like on the websites. It's not that hard to get. Again, there are a lot of health departments around the country where you can bring like the classic bank document or the DMV thing, a couple of power bills and your social security number, and that can get you a birth certificate. It's not that hard, ladies and gentlemen. It's not. So, anywho, there's a lot of Republicans who are in favor of staying until this thing gets passed. And we're up against the August 6th recess. So the senators, the representatives, they're going to go home and they are going to campaign because it's campaign season, boys and girls. And then they'll come back and do a whole lot of nothing. We'll be fighting about a government shutdown right before the election. Gee, I wonder how that's going to go. And then it'll be midterm time. And that'll be it. So the August recess, now you have a lot of, a lot more Republicans who are standing, again, I'm a little surprised by the list, standing more together and saying, no, we're not going to go on recess. We don't want to go on recess. We don't want to like walk away. And again, it's not a true recess. It's very performative, very pro forma. So they'll essentially do this awkward gavel every 72 hours, which will prevent them from actually going to recess. Because if they actually go into real rules-based recess, then Trump gets to make a bunch of recess appointments. And boy, the Senate doesn't want to have that happening. Oh, heaven forbid. And so the Republican-led Senate will go into this very performative kind of fake pseudo recess. Now, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, those were the two guys who initially came out and said, we should not be going on recess. We have work to do. Now, they were joined by Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, Jim Banks of Indiana, Ashley Moody of Florida, the new Darlene Graham, sister of the late Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, Bill Hagerty, Tennessee, Katie Britt, Alabama. And then today, to my genuine surprise, we're joined by Todd Young of Indiana. So that would be what I would consider one of the first establishment senators who's also endorsed this. And then Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. So this is Marcia today talking about, again, the need not to go on recess and to actually stick around and, do work.
We will stay here weekends and until we can get this passed, because we know this is important. Now, you and I talked last week about breaking this bill apart and doing one piece at a time. And as you know, last Monday night, I led our senators on the floor in pushing forward with just show a voter ID, that portion of the bill. So we're saying whatever it takes, if it is staying here, if it's breaking the bill in pieces.
So again, is any of this actually going to happen? No, but there is something good that comes out of this. And by the way, oh, I'm sorry. I should also point out Eric Schmidt of Missouri is now also on this list. He's joined, since I copied this list down later today. Again, I'm not surprised because, again, Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri is one of the kind of guys that wants to get a lot of this stuff done. And you'll see, I'd say a good probably 10 other Republican senators that likely get on this train. And again, one of the reasons why is the establishment age of the Republican Party. It's ended. It is on its way out because the balance of power inside the Republican Party is changing. And it is changing in two ways. There are two groups that are gaining members. There are two groups that are losing members. So the two groups in the party that are losing members would be the establishment, the technocrats, and then the libertarian Republicans. They are becoming a dying breed. There are very few of them remaining. And then you have two groups gaining. You have the traditional conservatives, and then you have the populist members of the party. They're gaining. And so the idea that Thune and then Tom Tillis and then John Cornyn, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and then Bill Cassidy, sometimes fitting in this group. Again, he's throwing his fit because he lost his primary in Louisiana. That's kind of the crew that's standing against this. Now, is that going to be enough? Yes. Thune is very, very unhappy with this. Cornyn is grumpier than this, though. I guess a CNN reporter ran up and right up to the SUV as Cornyn was stepping out from Texas. Again, he's also lost his primary, and he's very, very grumpy about it. Here he was complaining when asked about, again, recess in the Save America Act.
I don't understand the rationale. I think it's basically we're over-promising, and we're not going to be able to deliver on that promise because we don't have the votes.
So the answer here is an honest person. Now, I understand you have to play by certain kinds of teamwork rules. After a certain point, though, I reach a point where I am no longer willing to tolerate those who are around me making stupid decisions. And this is a genuine, true thing, and I can't get over it. I can't. If I, God forbid, ever ran for office, the idea that I would just never, ever, ever criticize another member of my party and say, I mean, this person's not getting on the ball. They're kind of lazing around. They're giving one answer behind closed doors and one answer to your face. I don't care. I don't care for the rule that says you can never do that. I say let some of that stuff out in the open. I do. That's my current argument with Mitch McConnell, by the way, who I said, yeah, at this point, probably would be easy enough to release a video to prove that you are here, that you are coherent, and that you are still around. I think that would be a good thing. I know there are a lot of people on my side of the aisle that are like, well, don't talk about it. You can always, talk about Biden instead. I don't care for that. I don't have an issue with telling anyone exactly what I believe. If I can't argue the point out, then I don't deserve to have that point. So those things all said, Cornyn, he's very grumpy about it. He won't actually say why they don't have the votes. He knows exactly who. He's part of the group that refuses to break the filibuster.
To pass it, no matter how long we stay, and we're not going to change the filibuster. So, but somehow the president's convinced that if he presses hard enough, that we will come around. And but I just don't think that's likely to happen.
Is he putting Thune in an impossible position here?
Well,
see?
I think, I wouldn't say impossible. They'll figure it out, but it's a very...
See, immediately, as soon as another member of the party is mentioned, I'm going into a tunnel of my car, and it's not impossible. Okay. I don't care for that. Answer the question. I don't care. I'm the same way, by the way, in interviews. Last night, again, on a CNN panel, when the guy opposite of me asked very specifically about the Civil Rights Act and Project 2025 because the poor man couldn't answer questions about the Democratic Socialists of America, and he panicked. And as he panicked and was like, hey, what about Project 2025? I gave straight answers. Why? Because I don't have the time to sit here and play word games with people. It's not fair to you. And that's not even out of morality. That's just because I'm annoyed. that's the genuine part. Now, again, credit to Sean Hannity. Not that I would withhold such credit from Sean Hannity. He gave a beautiful eulogy on the late Senator Lindsey Graham today. Here was Hannity to Thune on this in an interview, I believe last night, but if I'm wrong, I apologize. It may be a day earlier.
Being with you. President putting a lot of pressure on you, the Senate, to get it done.
Right.
There are two paths towards it. The Mike Lee path, you stay in session.
I apologize, radio crew. I'm supposed to have sent you to a commercial break. Go, be gone with ye. And we'll be on the live stream in the meantime. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You take to the floor, real filibuster, versus the Lindsey Graham method, which was he thought you could do it through reconciliation.
Right. Well, and I think probably the best path to success is through a budget reconciliation. And there aren't.
It's not, because the parliamentarian, again, I'm so tired of this, as though the Americans are too stupid. The Save America Act has nothing to do with the budget. Reconciliation is to reconcile the budget. There's extra money, we can move it around. Let's say the reconciliation budget works like that, the reconciliation process. Let's say the government gives $18 billion to the Department of Education and gives $2 billion to national parks. And then about 5 minutes later, they're like, that's really stupid. Let's not do that. So through reconciliation, they give $10 billion to the Department of Education and $10 billion to the National Park Service, balancing it out. The total of $20 billion never changed. That's reconciliation. It's for budget. It's not for, well, if Arkansas plays by the rules, they get this grant. That's not what it's for. If you're going to break the filibuster, have the cojones. All right, we'll call Pete Hegseth. We'll have you get the testosterone. Make the choice. Don't filibuster me on air. Answer the well, I think it's about the reconciliation process. You know damn well the parliamentarian's going to flip you off and spit in your face and say, no.
We can't do everything in budget reconciliation, but we can do parts of it.
Oh, parts of it. Oh, boy, parts of it. What's that going to be? Well, if you give us the grants, then we will... then you got to follow this rule. What happens to that? You have 20 different blue states suing the federal government for not giving them certain grants. We just saw this. Josh Shapiro, the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, just sued the Trump administration because Josh argues the Trump administration has no right to withhold grant funding, which it does under the law, if they don't play by certain rules. The carrot approach where you dangle it and go, here, take the carrot. That doesn't work. It doesn't. As long as federal judges are willing to, again, simply say that you give them the money anyway, it's not going to work.
The one thing about the talking filibuster, and it hasn't been used in something like 100 years, people...
Oh, no, it's not been used for 100 years? Oh, clearly we must throw it out. I happen to notice the Constitution's pretty freaking old. We're still using it.
Point to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but that it actually was done under regular order. They invoked cloture, passed it that way.
There was still filibustering. There was still, we invoked cloture. Okay.
But you turn control of the floor over to the Democrats. It's not only unlimited debate, it's unlimited amendments. And the Democrats will have a long list of amendments. And so,
but you vote on the amendments. So this is what he's not saying here. He said, well, the Democrats they're gonna amend all of it. And you know what? As soon as the Democrats, Cory Booker says, I have this amendment, the Republican Senate says, okay, next. And then the Democrats eventually do genuinely get tired because they are old. And then, presto hesto, it's done. And you pass it, and that's it. That's the point of the filibuster. You're supposed to argue it until you're out of breath, and then that's it.
So every time they get an amendment, get it considered, gets disposed of, the clock resets. Every Democrat can give 2 hours of speeches, so that's 47 or times 2, 90.
Wouldn't you want that, though? You guys are going to go on recess. It's campaign season time, boys and girls. Let's get real for a second here. It's campaign season. A lot of these senators that are running for re-election in very contested seats and that want to go around and doing, various here's and there's for campaigning, you do realize that if you keep them doing 2-hour speeches there, they can't be out campaigning. Radio crew, welcome back to from your commercial break. I don't understand why. Come on. We all know, you and I both know, there's very little that's going to get passed at all between now and the midterms. You know it, I know it. I don't know why a lot of my fellow colleagues out there in the wide world are pretending that there's, oh man, all of these bills have a chance. All of a sudden, it's going to be amazing. No, it's not. The country's extremely divided. The establishment, and John Cornyn's throwing a fit. Bill Cassidy's wearing pull-ups now because who knows when he's going to piss his pants. He's so upset over Trump being Trump. And then again, Mike Johnson, the leadership, his leadership in the House. What a waste of such excellent leadership right now. The man's put forward all of the bills. And then Thune gets up there and he's like, well, we can't just, do things. Why not? Throw the dice, home slice. Get it going.
4 hours of speeches, and then every time you have a vote on an amendment, you go back, start all over again. So
to watch Mazie Hirono further desist into insanity because she's forced to speak for 4 hours, that would be the most hilarious thing. Just as soon as they finish, like, we do this amendment, Republicans just as together as they'd also all go. Even from Mitch McConnell's hospital bed. Whatever. You Skype him in, you roll him into the Senate chamber, and he just goes, nope. Why not? That would be entertaining as all get out. It'd be awesome.
The Democrats, this is something that they're salivating over the opportunity to have as a talking.
They're not, by the way.
Filibuster. So that isn't the best path in my view. And frankly,
do you know why? Because the Democrats aren't going, come on, do it. The Democrats have never once played reverse psychology ever. They've never once played, because then you get people that immediately assault you for not immediately affirming every single thing that they have deep down in their hearts. There's no reverse psychology on the Democrat side of the aisle. They're very clear. They want you to do certain things. Now, I want to flip through here and share with you something that is rather precious to illustrate my point. The Democrats are legitimately all putting forward the exact same tweets. We will never allow it to pass. We will never allow it to become law. It's voter suppression, and on, amen. Best of luck to him with this. Now, again, I told you that the Senate races in general are where things get spicy, because Republicans could keep them in the Senate, talking themselves into comas. It would be really, really, really funny. And instead, they have decided right now to set their own party aflame. Democrats have decided in the meantime, while they really could be putting some pressure forward and making some proposals, Democrats have instead decided that they're going to go all in on the socialists. And as I discovered yesterday, that when you bring this up to them, they get very, very, very upset. And it's really, really funny. So a lot of candidates out there that are saying some really wild and crazy things. Abdul El Sayed had a big, huge debate with Haley Stevens, the Chris Farley of Michigan. And she's really, 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 really bad. Haley Stevens is really, really bad at talking. Her voice is very grating. There are a lot of clips making it around the internet of this one very performative speech she did in a black shirt and then pink gloves, flapping them around, where she was screaming, I think during the COVID era, or no, maybe it was about Planned Parenthood, something about that. She's kind of a wacko. But Abdul El Sayed is, very, very, very radical. And if you point out, hey, you have a lot of the same positions as the Democratic Socialists of America, again, we're going to get to in a second, and you say, you propose all of these socialist proposals, and then also, abolishing ICE and abolishing prisons and the police and et cetera ad nauseum. Then he says, well, I'm not a socialist. I just understand everything else, which is bizarre. Here you go.
Is rebuilding a health department in the city of Detroit, leading Wayne County's Department of Health, Human and Veteran Services. We had to go in there and work with a diverse community to be asking, what are the challenges we face and how do we actually solve them? We were able to identify the fact that our county ranked the number 8 for medical debt nationwide, and we could eliminate that for a penny on the dollar. So we set aside $7 million to erase up to $700 million in medical debt. When kids couldn't get glasses, 30% of them would get tested positive for needing glasses and wouldn't get a pair. We put optometrists on vans outside of schools so that as soon as a kid got a positive test, they go out, get a full optometric exam, and get a pair of glasses delivered within 2 weeks of a vision test. Now,
so what he's proposing, he sets it all up. He's like, I'm not a socialist. However, I think what we really need is universal health care. So he cites, again, eye exams for kids outside of schools, which, if you're talking about local grants for something like that the local community pays for at the local level, I don't have an issue with this. I don't have an issue with it. Again, if it's a grant for an optometrist to choose to participate in, there's not an issue there. But the universal healthcare side of things is when things start to get wildly expensive and they absolutely don't work.
Working with a diverse community of people, you come to realize that not every solution fits the same way. You've got to be thinking about a solution in the right way. When it comes to the question of socialism, I'm not a socialist. But I'm just a capitalist who understands how capitalism works.
I'm just a capitalist who wants the government to directly fund, organize, and run businesses.
The biggest threat to capitalism was never the idea of government regulation. It was always monopoly.
No, the biggest threat to capitalism, again, the biggest threat to a free market system is the government picking certain players over others. That's the genuine end of the line. Because if you enforce the same common free market standards, then companies playing by the same rules are always undercut by true innovative measures. And this is one of the things that at the end of his life, Teddy Roosevelt, who was a lead trust buster, admitted. He admitted near the end of his life in his memoirs, he made it very clear that he thought he went too far with regulating things and expecting them to get better. And it was argued later by his family that essentially if he could have done things different, it would have prevented the Wilsonian administrative state from becoming as hellish as it ended up becoming.
I want you to think about the stuff that you have to buy, whether it's your groceries and the number of stores you can go to, or it's buying a flight to see your grandmother, or it's picking a phone or a phone provider. You have like 2 or 3 options.
What? What do you mean you have 2 or 3 options? What are you talking? The argument that Kinnetti's making is that, well, capitalism, these monopolies of choice, what we really need is the government to step in and run phones and flights in grocery stores. Yeah, this is causing a serious split in the party because what may work in New York is not working in Michigan. It's not. Radio crew, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. We have a lot more to cover on the live stream. In the meantime, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. All right, with them off to the blissful commercial land, let me show you what I mean, because I like to bring receipts around here. It's what we do. And yeah, the polling is not looking too good if Abdul El-Sayed is the guy. It's just not. Mike Rogers, according to the latest Glenn Gariff poll from July 22nd through the 24th, likely voters, Mike Rogers is beating him by over 10 points. Haley Stevens, however, the Joe Biden-esque, you go girl, fan down by the river Democrat, she is up in margin of error territory, beating Mike Rogers by less than a point. So it's going to be close unless they pick Abdul El-Sayed. And there are Democrats that are aware of this, Democrats who are Rust Belt oriented, like John Fetterman. He made this point very clearly, and the kind of Senator Kennedy of Louisianification of Fetterman, where he's like colloquially making fun of the socialists. I get a good kick out of that. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, I never worked out in male modeling, Yeah, I mean, you could call me Senator Shrek, whatever. But this guy is really the Pontiac Plattner, and now he's really
the Pontiac Plattner that's some good naming.
Running to be the head of our emerging pro-Hamas wing here in the party. So for me, politically, some of the things that he said or done are unacceptable to me. I'm not really sure what I've really done or voted for that has offended the little guy so much, but overall, right now, this is a serious game that we're engaging in, and these same people like Bernie Sanders and other people created the Plattner disaster.
As a quick reminder, when Fetterman first got into Congress, Fetterman voted most closely with Bernie Sanders. Fetterman was a very progressive member of Congress. And again, would I vote for Fetterman in a 1 or 2, two choice election? Would I still vote for the Republican? Yeah. I mean, 99% of the chance, absolutely. Were I in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? You'll have to ask producer Lou about that one. But in this case, Fetterman is moving further and further away because he's recognizing that with the hyper-progressive policies comes a whole lot of hot, stinking garbage that hurts everyone around it.
He was asked just this Sunday, he has no regrets. Yeah, I have no regrets supporting an accused rapist. I have no regrets supporting a guy with a Nazi tattoo on his chest.
That's Bernie Sanders, and he starts calling out those in the party, in the Democratic Party, who are surging forward right after endorsing Eric Swalwell, right after endorsing Graham Plattner, right after endorsing. Now they're all getting behind Abdul El-Sayed, I should say, of that crew. Elizabeth Warren is a great example. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts is fist fighting Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego to be the Jim Cramer of election endorsements. Their record is horrible. Like levels of stank we have not seen nigh on millennia. So Elizabeth Warren here, her kind of guy. So again, she's thrown all of her weight behind Plattner. She threw all of her weight behind Eric Swalwell before all of the stuff got too bad. Now here we are yet again.
Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about Troy Jackson. You'll get to talk to him in just a minute. You'll see why I'm feeling good.
Troy Jackson, the replacement. Plattner is also like still very, very clinging to the Plattner and the socialist stuff.
He's the right guy for Maine. But I'm also feeling good. I'm feeling good about Michigan. I was just there, as you know, I was just there day before yesterday on the ground.
Oh, she was there campaigning in Michigan? Gee, Republicans, wouldn't it be great if you could tie up senators like this in the Senate for talking for 2 hours? You think after Elizabeth Warren gets done droning for 2 hours like she's back doing a Harvard lecture to Ben Shapiro, that like all of a sudden she's going to want to hop on the plane and jet set over to Michigan? No, she's going to drink 3 bottles of overpriced wine, pour a 4th into a half tub of Breyer's ice cream. She's going to call it an evening.
Campaigning with Abdul al-Sayed and the energy, the people who just can finish the sentences. You know,
I'm sorry, and I know this may be mean. Actually, you know what? Some of you in the comments, I love y'all, and especially, I may be one of the only show hosts out there that doesn't pander to the youths, meaning that like my target audience is not the 25 to 45 demo or the 18 to 24 demo. It's not. So those of you out there who are the senior citizen style of folks, I have a question for you. Does it bother you whenever there's like another person of your age that is like talking about how much energy they have and, oh, zest and age is just the number and the energy? Like, does it come across as fake to you as it does to those of us arrogant, wet behind the ear youths? I'm just curious. Like, is it as bothering to you? Hey, look, I'm not, if you're 48, then this question isn't for you. We have people who are older than you watching the show. There ain't nothing wrong. And by the way, I'm just curious. I want to know. To quote Phil Collins, I want to know. Can you show me? Yeah, all right, cool. All right, so all of you agree. Yeah, the fake energy thing. I thought so. I had a hunch. Now, we're not talking like of Notre Dame style hunch, but enough to ask you about it. So again, there you go. That's the Elizabeth Warren style excitement. Again, if you want to make a bad endorsement, you just ask the Native American there, how? Thank you. That's exciting stuff. Okay. Excuse me. Last but not least on Abdul el-Sayed, and I want to get to some other stuff here because there's far more to cover. So on the Abdul el-Sayed, we did finally get his long-awaited 2026 financial disclosures. His wife owns a rental property in Dubai, which I always enjoy the whole, we're American homegrown, we don't, whatever. And then like, it's like foreign properties owned in a bunch of places. Is that like some kind of a deal breaker for me no matter who it is? Nah, I just think it's funny. Again, the DSA candidates are getting caught in lies left and right because they want to convince you that they just understand capitalism. They know how things work. They're just they just want universal health care. They don't want to abolish the police and abolish ICE and close all of the prisons and abolish the United States Senate. Well, even after Francesca Hong, the socialist running for the governor of Wisconsin, who's currently leading the polls, even though she said directly from her campaign to Fox News, quote, Representative Hong has never called for abolishing the U.S. Senate. Tom Tiffany, the Republican there, cannot produce a single statement where she did because it doesn't exist. Only there's just a bit of a problem. Just a bit of a problem here. And it just so happens that, in 2021, there you go, abolish the Senate. Gee, wow, who could have seen that coming? Who could have seen that coming? That brings us over to some Mamdani and DSA insanity. So, again, Mamdani's having a real special time as the new leader of the Democratic Party. He just posted a searchable database of essentially those in New York City who he kind of wants to target as the super duper wealthy. So there's a special new tax that he's been floating for ages. The idea that if you own a second property in New York City, you own 2 properties, one of them's in New York, you're going to get a super duper tax because obviously you're super rich and you're hurting all of us. How dare you own property in New York City and own something somewhere else, you evil, sick person. And so Mamdani decided, well, what's the move? The move is to I guess, create a database of people for all of the socialists to target so you can have more Brian Thompson style murders. Here's the initial report on this. I think Jesse Waters on this one.
Appetizer, because if you own property in his town, he knows exactly where you live. The city just posted a searchable list of every homeowner on the hook for his new tax. Names, addresses, 30,000 of them.
To be clear, I don't often play like other networks' kind of introductory anchor coverage. But because this is where I learned about this from, I like to give the credit. I know there are some individuals out there who will try to steal the story and then paint it as their own. We don't have any qualms about that here. So Jesse Waters is doing a great job of illustrating this story. Fox News has done a stellar job covering this.
A socialist mayor handing out a Rolodex of the rich in a city that just watched a CEO get gunned down on the sidewalk. Sounds like a hit list. You got a problem with it? Go protest. It's what the city's there for anyway.
I think one of the bedrocks of our city is protest.
So to be clear, again, and I'm not like trying to like step in and do some kind of like obnoxious fact check here. In this case, Mamdani is responding to the Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, came over to the United States. He's in Washington, D.C. He spoke with President Trump in some closed-door meetings and in some in-front-of-camera meetings. Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, they had some conversations, some spicy kind of gruffle grumps, and then they were very pleasant today before the late Senator Lindsey Graham's funeral. That's what Mamdani is referencing here about protest, but it is applicable here, and Waters is correct in using the clip.
It is something that has been a part of what makes our city so special, that New Yorkers can express themselves, whether they are in support or in opposition, no matter on whatever topic.
Protest? The city runs on capitalism and cocktails.
Well, I'm going to leave the 3-martini lunch over to the National Review crew. But I do want to touch on one other thing. Mamdani did get in front of the country and announced that he was providing this super duper new amazing grocery store. Oh, wow, it's incredible. And this was going to be the thing. These new grocery stores he's going to put in the boroughs he's going to make state run and allot funding. And for only these grocery stores, they are going to cut a bunch of the regulations that make owning a bodega in New York City, their convenience stores, more expensive, that make New York grocery stores more expensive because of all of these regulations. So Mamdani's cutting some of the regulations, and also he's going to price fix meat, vegetables, other staple items monthly. So it's a big 30 to 40% discount because it's all centrally planned. Where have I heard this before? So he was very, very excited about this. And I made the case on a certain CNN Newsnight show yesterday. We were talking about kind of the broader national impact of Mamdani and his policies, because Mamdani is kind of the new leader of the party. And the DNC is flat broke. They are millions of dollars in debt. They are now begging vendors to essentially be paid in IOUs until they totally get more money, wink. And things aren't exactly going very, very well. Again, you have Mamdani supporters out after the primary wins for his selected candidates that are screaming at a picture or a clip of Hakeem Jeffries, "You're next, you're next." Again, openly out for blood as they all are, as Jennifer Welch said quite clearly on her podcast. They're bleeping coming for you and from her Botox palace. So those kinds of things have become the norm in the Democratic Party. It's a trend. And it just so happens that it's not as popular as a lot of people seem to believe. And I was, my team keeps me abreast of a lot of things during the day. One of the pollsters that I really enjoy watching is CNN's Harry Enten. The dude does a pretty decent job of breaking down some of the voter data. I don't always agree with his analyses, but a lot of the time, I think his analyses are pretty spot on. Here you go, Harry Enten.
Net favorable opinion of the Tea Party back in June of 2010 versus the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, right now. Remember, the Tea Party helped keep Democrats in control of the United States Senate back in 2010 because Republicans ran all these candidates that were just seen out of the mainstream, right? Christine O'Donnell in Delaware. How about Ken Buck in Colorado? How about Sharon Angle, who did the impossible in Nevada and helped get Harry Reid another term in the United States Senate? Well, their net favorable rating back in June of 2010, 13 points underwater. Not too hot to trot, but not absolutely terrible. Compared to the DSA now, 25 points underwater.
What does this mean? I'm just going to skip ahead here. the socialism crew is very, very popular in university towns in the blue areas. That's where it's very, very popular with the youths and with the rioters. That's where it's really popular. It is not popular among anyone else in the Obama coalition. It's not super popular with the suburban white women. It's really not popular at all in the other traditionally Obama coalition groups. Again, the LGBTQ plus 2IA group, very, very, very popular with. For traditionally union voters in the Rust Belt, not popular. For the the Black Americana voter group, as established by the Democratic National Committee, who they always cite for black voters like this, black voters don't like this, not popular at all. For Hispanic voters, nope. Chair of the Hispanic caucus getting ousted. And I had the chance, we were talking about this yesterday evening on CNN Newsnight. And we got to do kind of an interesting conversation because when talking about the national scheme of things, because again, right now, the generic congressional ballot, according to the latest Reuters poll, has Democrats losing a point and Republicans gaining 2 points. They are now within 2 points of each other in a midterm year. The generic congressional ballot should not be close for an opposition year like this at all, especially when Congress has done bleep all. So what's going on? Well, the socialist answer to the, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to say that's different than Trump? Because again, Trump is kind of marrying conservative foreign policy with Bill Clinton 1990s populism style economics. He is. Whether you like it or not, whether it works or not, that's what he's doing. Kind of a blend, kind of some Reagan-esque style investment calling, but that's the blend, that's the merge. And so a lot of Democrats in the moderate, again, air quotes, on the economic side, they can't go anywhere. So they can't say, well, I wouldn't do tariffs when they've spent their entire careers talking about tariffs. So it's really crushing the entire party. Because Americans, if they really want something different, what they really want is, again, when I say they, I mean the active voters, what they're seeking, the average person who really only cares about politics when they have to. Voters still trust Republicans on the economy more than Democrats by a couple of points. It's still spare. It's still there, sparingly though it may be. Because voters would rather have the kind of Newt Gingrich Republican of yore if they had to have something as an alternative to the other Republicans. Very few Americans outside of New York and Denver and California are looking for the socialist candidate. And again, you don't have to take my word for it, but I want to show this to you just because I think personally they're rather interesting. Not also because I was trending on TikTok and Instagram and Threads, because apparently I was super duper racist. That's right, I was horribly racist. It was awful. There were children that were crying. I mean, the ghost of Rosa Parks was glaring at me or something or other. So I wanted a chance also to share this with you as well. This is on CNN Newsnight yesterday evening.
Tonight, as the Democratic Socialists pick up a string of victories across the country, a new party platform from a progressive group is becoming fodder for GOP attacks.
I like the Republicans pounce kind of a thing. Hey, you appreciate certain things, you know.
99 days from the midterms, Democrats are facing a reckoning. Disavow and disown the Democratic Socialists of America, or embrace policy positions like these endorsed by the DSA's co-chair.
Okay, so we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform, and I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate.
True.
Okay, replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them.
Yep.
Abolish ICE.
Absolutely.
Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally.
As a long-term plan, yep.
Defund the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Abolish prisons, at least in large part.
Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah.
Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what's really interesting is that...
All right, so now we're going to get over to kind of my counterpart over here. So we have Isaiah Martin. And so now, again, all of this comes down to be clear, this comes down to the leader, the perceived leader, that being Zoran Mamdani. Again, here you go, Zoran Mamdani, very big Democrat socialist. That's understood. He is the voice and the energy of the party. So the argument has to be made, why is it good for Democrats to align with Zoran Mamdani? The argument that's going to be made is that, well, it needs to be a big tent party and everyone really likes it when we all work together. Well, Not quite, but we'll let him make his point.
You know, this is a person that has their own views, their own platform, and, you know, I think everybody has their own positions. But I find it really interesting that conservatives actually want to try to go and talk about this when they...
All right, so we're going to pivot right away. This is a person, he says, with their own views, their own platform. This is a person in the leadership of the DSA. If I am a member of the Freedom Caucus in the House, and the head of the Freedom Caucus, whoever the chair is in the House, whoever the chair of the Freedom Caucus is, if they get in front of the country and they say something insane, that is going to affect the other members of the Freedom Caucus. If I am chair of the RNC and I say something insane, the Republican Party itself will likely have to answer for it. That's how it works. So saying, oh, this is their person with their own opinion, I mean, that's leadership of the caucus. But here comes the pivot, because you can't address the claims made that is shifting the polling. So what do? You pivot and you find something to claim that is out there that's an even bigger boogeyman. This is pathetic.
Literally at Project 2025.
Oh, my Project 2025. Oh, no. Oh, God.
In the last election, Project 2025, which was uniquely calling for the gutting of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act.
Okay, so I love going through this because I really enjoy dunking on individuals who don't read. Illiterates are fun. So, pull out the old mandate for leadership itself, the old Project 2025. I'm going to break it to you yet again. It's a menu. It is a menu of a ton of options. A lot of things inside Project 2025 are at odds with themselves because it's a menu. It wasn't just the Heritage Foundation. It was over 150 different organizations on the right, from the libertarian right over to the populist right, traditional conservatives and technocrats, that said, if you are going to do an administration, here is a menu of options. Some of those things did in fact change the language of the Civil Rights Act so that, for example, certain individuals who were being treated negatively by the law under the argument of the Civil Rights Act based on race and skin color, that would be modified so that it just created a non-discrimination clause for the government itself. But again, we're going to twist everything around. All why? All to distract from abolishing the Senate, abolishing the Department of War, the Pentagon, abolishing immigration of any kind, abolishing borders, immigration enforcement of any kind, abolishing borders, abolishing the Supreme Court and the presidency and making them appointees by the House.
And many different things. What I know is that the Democratic Party is a big tent party. We've got folks like Joe Manchin, folks like Zohran Mamdani, and I would like...
Joe Manchin left the Democratic Party. The dude walked away. No longer welcome in the party.
To work with somebody like Zohran Mamdani that has gone forward and had a sharp reduction in crime.
An okay analogy, but you would have to acknowledge Democrats ran against Republicans on Project 2025, and Republicans eventually had to try to disown it.
Interesting history, not necessarily. Just said, look, it's a menu of options. Maybe we'll use some of it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do something else. I like some things in it. I quite frankly haven't looked through all of it. Again, it's a big book. It's a menu. I don't read the entire full menu. You ever been to the Cheesecake Factory and read through that entire menu every time you go? Good Lord. This thing isn't fun to read through in a sitting. It's a menu for policy wonks. And the Trump administration's done some of the things in this book that went directly against some of the other things in this book. The horror. And hasn't done some things in this book at all.
Some of them tried to do it and others didn't, but
the point that's being made, though, again, why Mamdani is brought up right here and right now, very clearly, is because he's the perceived head of the DSA wing. He's the guy that's doing the policies. And this is who supposedly works for the big tent party, as though the union worker in Michigan or the Baptist preacher from inner city Charlotte they're going to be like, oh, Zohran Mamdani, I love that guy, because it's a big tent party.
You're acknowledging it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't support those things. But the point is that we need to talk about the things that people in elected office are doing. Anybody can come up with their own platform or whatever, just like the Heritage Foundation had when it came to Project 2025. What we're talking about is the results of the people that have been elected to office. I don't mind working. And matter of fact, I would love to work with someone like Zohran, who's had record lows on crime.
Zohran Mamdani, who spends the World Cup with Rikers inmates and is pushing to
universal
abolish
child care for
prisons.
so many people.
It's a real shame that black voters don't feel that way in the South.
So what I said was, it is a shame that black voters do not feel that way in the South. The argument that's been made across the TikTokosphere is that apparently, that we were just talking about Mamdani, we were just talking about New York on the street, getting a hot dog outside at the cart. And then all of a sudden, Tony comes in and to the black man makes it about black voters. No, but that's what he's going to freak out for and accuse me of race baiting. You can see right now immediately the pain on this man's face.
What the heck does race have to do with this?
According to the political,
So throughout the entire evening, he interrupted everyone consistently. Not even, again, his opponent, Lydia, next to him. He also interrupted consistently Sabrina Singh, the former Pentagon press secretary under Democrat administration, the entire evening. And so I just simply fired back and excuse you. Allow me to speak because I'm speaking. It's my point. And this upset him greatly. And apparently this was I don't know. This was a racial slur of some sort. Incredible, exciting stuff. I didn't know that excuse you could even be super racial, but apparently it was. Yeah. Did you know that when Rosa Parks got on the bus, they didn't say go to the back, they said excuse you. It's true. I know. I dug deep down into my whitest half Cherokee roots and pulled out the most racist thing I could think of. And then I set the N-word to the side and I said, excuse you. Thunder and lightning and pearls. Oh, the horror.
According to the Politico article citing black voters in the South who have made it clear that because Democrats are so focused on the DSA candidates, they have completely abandoned black voters running as Democrats.
So here's why I said, because you're explaining black voters to him. Here's why I said this, because you guys know I am a huge fan of receipts. So it just so happens that there's article after article after article after article after, oh my goodness, an article from CNN on July 27th. Why, gee whiz, that would be yesterday. Black voters may decide the nation's biggest Democratic primary. Many are clearly against the more progressive option. Southern black leaders warn their power is on the line and Democrats are looking elsewhere. Black voters keep putting the brakes on the socialist revolution. Black and Latino leaders ask, what do socialist wins mean for New York? Black New York City politician slams DSA as white supremacist, while growing Democratic feud spills onto social media. It just so happens that when you build a party around color groups as a wing, a block of the party that must be represented, again, that's not how the Republican Party operates, but I do happen to know that the House Congressional Black Caucus only allows Democrats in it. And the House Hispanic Caucus only allows Democrats in it. Gee, incredible, amazing. When you get to the conversations around the punditry, it is not my party that breaks up individuals by their skin color. However, if you would love to clutch pearls and freak out because the socialist policies are alienating other people in your party, I offer you the wompiest of womps and the sad tuba as you walk slowly away. Now, again, you can make this about me. You can say Tony's a racist. How dare he explain black voting to a black man, which is, I didn't get out the Sherwin-Williams paint swatches. Say, who am I going to explain this to? Aha! No, but if you would like to whistle past the graveyard on this issue right here and right now, and run a lot of these candidates and side with them and lose a lot of your support in the process. Again, James Tallarico is an excellent example of this. James Tallarico has black voters that are shouting in his face, we are going to stay home. We are not going to vote for you, James Tallarico. They're making it very, very, very clear. So, I mean, I don't know what it is you want me to say.
Have y'all seen Fox News and the mainstream media freaking out about DSA? It's actually so wild.
When you have only youths who come out and say, it's so wild, we just want universal health care and friendship and hugs. I mean, come on. And you ignore that a huge chunk of your party is going to stay home because they do not believe that any of what you are peddling to them is going to make their lives markedly better in any way, in any shape, or in any form. You're placing the order, and the restaurant is absolutely going to fill it. Now, there were some, other clips from last night's, news night panel that I would encourage you to watch. You can, by the way, find that particular. Do I actually have that one ready to go? I don't think we do on the Chiron. At Tony Kinnett Cast over on the YouTube side of things, subscribe to that channel. We're uploading a couple more because apparently the Cyclospora diarrhea parasite is all President Trump's fault. Exciting times indeed. So, alas, I'd like to move on very quickly here and cover a couple of other breaking news updates in the Iranian situation. So, this has come in the middle of the show, and I want to make sure that we're tracking all of these details correctly. So, the United States and Saudi forces have now carried out airstrikes on Iranian-backed militias in Iraq this evening. Central Command has stated that the targets were attacked after the groups were directed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to attack Saudi infrastructure. Now, I want to make this clear. This is the first instance that I know of in which the Saudis have joined the United States in cooperational strikes, co-belligerent strikes against Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. In fact, that would be the first time since the 90s that the Saudis have been getting a little excited over on the Iraqi side of things. Now, the president of the United States, again, there was all of this reporting that said we're going to get the MOU up and running again. No, I'm going to be very clear with you. The president of the United States delayed strikes because, you ready? Delayed strikes because Lindsey Graham's funeral was today. And there were a lot of world leaders that were there. And it's really annoying to run triple shifts out of the Department of War and have people shuffling in and out when you are, again, trying to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham. Again, perhaps ironically, because if there is anyone who would have been totally fine with Iran getting its clock cleaned during his funeral, it would have been Lindsey Graham. Now, I do want to play two clips from that funeral today because I think it was a very beautiful service. The president of the United States spoke. The vice president also spoke. I'm probably only going to play one clip. This is from President Trump.
No matter how high he rose, he never forgot where he came from. There's probably not a single town in South Carolina where Lindsey did not help repair a bridge, expand a school, improve a hospital, or recover from a disaster. He was a force of nature, and I will miss him greatly.
Rest easy, Colonel. So the other side of some of these news updates, at least at the present time, the strike in Iraq, an ammunition depot belonging to Iranian-backed militias in Ad Dair in the Basra government in Iraq has been struck, and it continues to detonate. Munitions depots going up in sparks and smokes and fireworks. My favorite. Nothing like the sweet sound of rounds cooking off to make you think, man, I'm not surrounded by enough cement or sand or very, very thick metal. Ammunition cooking off is just the most exciting way to relieve any constipation. Again, Iran attempted through the militias to strike the Kurds. It's not clear just yet whether or not it's not clear just yet whether or not this is going to escalate into a couple of strikes in Iran itself. We're going to keep an eye on that for the rest of the show. Not that we have a ton of time left. I did want to answer two very quick mail time questions because, I thought it would be appropriate. First and foremost, though, I do want to make it clear and thank the very, very kind sponsors of the show, and that would be the crew over at the Alliance Defending Freedom. So, very, very briefly here. Female athletes are being forced to compete still against biological males, sometimes without their consent or even their knowledge. In Washington, a high school sophomore, Callie Keeler, was sexually assaulted on the wrestling mat during a tournament. Only afterward did she learn her opponent was a boy who identifies as a girl. With the help of the Alliance Defending Freedom, Callie is bravely suing the state over a policy that not only allows males to compete in girls' high school sports, but does not require schools to disclose that information to female athletes or their parents. Don't let schools put gender ideology over the safety of our girls in sports. Your support today can help fight for Callie and other athletes just like her. For a limited time, your first gift to the ADF will be doubled by a special matching grant while funds last, but that's only if you text Tony, Tony, to 83848 or go to joinadf.com/Tony. So very, very quickly here at the end of the show, I can't resist doing just a smidgen of the good old-fashioned
mail time.
Mail time.
Mail time. On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right. So first question, and I really appreciated this one. I believe it came Teresa Topaz here said, I wonder if you've lost any IQ points or brain cells having to be on a panel with Abby Phillip as a moderator. I've watched some of her clips, and the race baiter next to her was something special. This is the hottest take that I don't think many of you are necessarily going to agree with, but that's okay. Abby Phillip doesn't bother me at all. She doesn't bother me. I know that Abby Phillip is politically on the left. She doesn't bother me. She doesn't. You go into that show knowing that there are going to be folks on the other side of the aisle that are going to speak over you, and I'm not bothered. So far, Abby Phillip and I have gotten along well. She has pitched questions to me and given me ample time to answer them, especially this last time. And again, I'm not trying to simp for anyone in any way, shape, or form. You know that's my policy here. But I'm also not going to lie and be like, oh yeah, she was mean and she was kicking me under the table and stuff. No, it wasn't. I mean, she didn't do me any favors, but also like Connell McShane over at News Nation doesn't do me any favors either when I'm on the air. Now, again, she'll argue with you as well. And there are a lot of moderators out there who will do that. Brad Palumbo is a libertarian moderator of his own show. And if you ever go watch a Republican versus a Democrat debate, it is 99% of the time Brad and the Democrat debating the Republican. There are shows like that. I'm not an impartial moderator. I'll never be impartial. I've never once tried to pass myself off to you as super impartial, bipartisan, centrist man. Ever. No. I'd rather be honest with you, and then you see for yourself where the news stops and then the analysis and the speculation begins. And I try to be even really clear about that. So I didn't really lose brain cells. It was fun. It was fun. Also, just for the record, as far as like being, getting hit with a large clip, by somebody trying to out of context and claim that I'm some kind of a super racist. I mean, the man, Isaiah's got like several million followers. That is definitely punching down. And if he wants to bring me up to his level and funnel a lot of traffic my way, you sure can, pal. Thanks. A real hoot. From two other questions here. We'll make it two for fun. One from Kitty says, hey, is Cori Bush's charity on the discussion board this week? And what does a charity need to file tax-wise that's different from an NGO? I'm thinking about covering that later this week because there are a couple of other non-government organizations and non-profit style fraud investigations and lawsuits that are happening later this week that I don't have enough on for a full segment. And I kind of like to give you guys enough substance so that we sit on a topic for a minute. So the answer is maybe. Then again, knowing us, the news will totally go a different direction and then, we'll go somewhere else. This last one is from. Wait. This last one here is from Holstein, and she asks, Tony, as a master educator, that's very, very kind, but I wouldn't apply that superlative to me. As a master educator, do you believe that teaching is a calling regardless of the sheepskin or the degree attained? No, I don't. I think that teaching is romanticized a lot. I think that the true idea of teaching is the model of the master and the apprentice. So the idea, so again, I often cite this, but in Johnny Tremaine, Johnny reaches a certain age, I think like 12 years old, and he is apprenticed to a silversmith until he burns the crap out of his hand. And there was an idea that you moved forward by imitating your parents and learning directly from them, and then also masters in the community. I think that's what the model of education should be. Teaching is something that every person should have to grapple with, because parenting is teaching. It is. Do I think it's no, do I think that like the good Lord has given several gifts to individuals and that some people are better at teaching than others? Yeah, absolutely. I still occasionally, if you would permit me, I think that even though I used to be a teacher in a lot of ways, I still kind of am, just kind of to a different audience, although I wouldn't say that I'm teaching you like you're my students. I wouldn't say that. But like explaining topics to people who don't bathe in that all day, yeah. That's what I do, and I love doing it. Do I think teaching degrees are worthless? A lot of them, yeah. Were there some classes that I had that were excellent? Sure. But I think that the doing is a lot bigger of a thing. I think that, again, medical shadowing and like your residency should begin a lot earlier, because learning on the job and shadowing is a phenomenal thing. And my biggest case in point would be homeschoolers. Homeschool students who follow their parents around doing day-to-day tasks are very advanced. And one of the reasons why they're very advanced is because they are watching and practicing the parent doing the adult thing. They're not spoken to like a baby and given worksheets that treat them ridiculously, or God forbid, in the case of Minnesota, given transgender dolls with swappable genitals. Gross. We might have to talk about that later this week. Yeah, I don't think any of the other, we might have to get to some of these other questions later this evening. So in that vein, the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. Take care.